Following, we're going to look at the function and voice leading of leading tone 7th chords. We're going to look at how to properly use 7 half diminished and 7 fully diminished and 4-part writing in this time period. We're also going to look at, and then we're going to look at the limited functions of second inversion chords in this type of music. We're going to also touch upon how second inversion chords are used in homophonic music. Okay, we're going to start, before we get into leading tone chords with sevenths on them, the diminished chord with a 7th on it, let's talk about the regular 7 diminished triad. We're just gonna do an aside for a second. I'm gonna say regarding the 7 diminished triad. We're not talking about 7th chords yet. We're just talking about the triad. All right, let's do some bullet points. All right, is the 7 diminished triad ever used in root position, guys?
No.
No, it isn't. Why not?
Sorry, you will be doubling the leading tone.
Yeah,
tendency.
Yeah, if you remember from your root position guidelines, when everything's said and done, it's optimal to double the root of the chord. And the root of the 7 diminished triad is, of the 7 diminished chord, is the leading tone. And so if you double the leading tone, you got to resolve both leading tones. And then in resolving both leading tones, you get parallel octaves. So that's not good. So in this style of music, at this point in time, 7 diminished is never used in root position. It's usually seen in first inversion. That's why in your chart of harmonic functions and directionality, when I mention the triad, not with the 7th, the triad, 7th diminished, I always put a 6 next to it because it's used in first inversion as a triad. All right. Okay, in regards to how it usually functions as a triad in first inversion, it usually functions as a passing chord between 1 and 1/6. And we're going to talk more about passing chords later today. Bach definitely prefers to use the 7 diminished 6, the diminished triad in first inversion, rather than 5/6/4, which we're going to talk about later. Okay, now we can move into 7 half diminished 7. All right, I can't properly use the symbols for half diminished 7 here. Anyone know what the symbol for half diminished is?
It's I call it the degree with the dash in it.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. I just wanted to make sure you guys could picture it because I can't draw it out here. Yeah. Okay. So 7 half diminished 7 naturally happens in major keys, and hence, in this style of music, in this time period, it's only used in major keys. It's part of the dominant group in the chart of harmonic functions and directionality, but composers of the time prefer using the equivalents of this chord. For some reason, historically, composers of this time, although they prefer using the fully diminished 7, even in major keys, over the half diminished 7. But in your own chorales, at the end of the semester, for your final project, you're welcome to use half diminished 7 if you want to. Although, if you want to sound like Bach, Bach prefers the fully diminished 7 in major keys over the half diminished. Again, keep in mind, half diminished 7 in this time period was only used in major keys. It could not be used in minor keys, and the reason it's used in major keys is because it naturally happened in major keys. When you add a 7th above the leading tone chord, you get a half diminished 7 in major keys. Okay, now there are special voice leading issues for 7 half diminished 7 and 4-part writing, but before we get to those, let me put up the notes, the points that I just mentioned. Okay, so the first voice leading issues, when you use 7 half diminished 7, guys, you have to treat it like a non-dominant 7th chord. You have to prepare the 7th. What does that mean, prepare the 7th?
The way you approach it?
Yes, it's important how you approach the 7th in this style of music. And so how are you supposed to approach 7ths on non-dominant 7ths and also the half diminished 7? How do you approach it?
By step.
By step, or
by common tone.
By common tone. Those are the 2 ways to approach it. Okay, now there are 2 tendency tones in this chord. There's the leading tone, which resolves how?
It goes to 1. I always get it mixed up.
Yeah, it resolves by step up to 1, and the 7th of the chord resolves
the chordal 7th down.
Yeah, it resolves down. Now here's a little thing you have to be aware of. When the chord is in root position and the 7th is in the soprano, then parallel fifths may result when you move to the 1 chord. And there's a special trick that you can use to avoid this without like doing something unattractive like tripling the 3rd in the 1 chord. All right. The most attractive resolution for this is, solution to this is if you really want to have the 7th of the chord in the soprano, like you really want it there, then you gotta use the chord in first inversion. That's the simplest solution. Okay, so here are the formal notes for that. All right. Okay, number 2. All right, so you got to treat the 7th like the 7th of a non-dominant 7th chord. You got to prepare the 7th by step or by common tone. You got to resolve the tendency tones, which are the leading tone and the 7th. You guys know how to resolve those. Okay, and here's some issues with the chord in root position. And the 7th is in the soprano voice. Parallel fits may result when you move to 1. Easiest and most attractive okay, so issues with the chord and root position, and the 7th is in the soprano voice. Parallel fits may result when you move to 1. Easiest and most attractive solution. If you need the 7th in the soprano, if you the only place you were able to prepare that 7th was in the soprano, then you got to use the best thing, the easiest thing you could do is use the chord in first inversion. Any questions so far, guys? Any questions?
No.
No? Okay, so 7 half diminished 7 isn't too hard to deal with. I will give you 1 or 2 exercises to resolve it properly in your homework. 7 fully diminished 7, however, there are a lot more things to think about. So let's start. Let's take a look at that guy. All right. Hey, I should highlight this.
Quick question on the voice leading.
Yeah.
For number 2, LT, what did that stand for?
Oh, leading tone.
Oh, gotcha. All right.
Yeah, resolve the tendency tones, the leading tone and the 7th on the chord. All right, let me do a little space thinger there. 7 fully. And again, the 7 fully diminished 7, I can't draw the symbol for you here, but it's this Roman numeral with the degree sign through it without a slash through it. All right. And I guess I can highlight this guy because he's an important topic. There we go. Save. Okay, a little bit about 7 fully diminished 7. It naturally occurs in harmonic minor. You need the raised 7th on a minor to make 7 fully diminished 7. But once you take that into account, it naturally happens in minor keys, in harmonic and melodic minor keys. But composers of this time period used it both in major keys and in minor keys. It was even in major keys, it was preferred over 7 half diminished 7. And it's this, like the half diminished 7, is also part of the dominant group in the chart of harmonic functions and directionality. One thing to keep in mind, though, when spelling this chord, guys, is this chord, and it doesn't matter whether you're in a major key or in a minor key, this chord always requires an accidental to build it. So in major keys, you're going to need flat 6. You're going to need the accidental for flat 6, which is the accidental is going to be on the 7th of the chord. In minor keys, the accidental is going to be the leading tone accidental. So if you find that you want to use a fully diminished 7th chord and you're not using an accidental in your piece, then there's something wrong. All right. So make sure that that you have the accidental you need according to what key you're in, if you want to use 7 fully diminished 7. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. Now, this chord is really dissonant, and it has a very strong pull to 1. It makes a really assertive pull to 1. And because of its dissonance, it was popular to use. Bach loved dissonance, by the way. And the dissonance and pull of this chord is due to the 2 tritones that are embedded in the chord. So there are issues in regards to properly, you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm air quoting properly because, of course, in the context of this music, in this style that we're trying to write, we have to properly resolve those tritones in order to sound like we're in the, we're writing like composers in this time period. So let me point out where these tritones are. The first tritone can be measured between the root and the 5th of the chord. That's tritone number 1. And tritone number 2 is formed between the 3rd of the chord and the 7th of the chord. And I'm going to break down the proper voice leading of this chord so that we resolve it idiomatically, like composers did of this time period, but just to an overview of the entire process of resolving this chord properly. One, the first thing you got to do is well, when you use this chord, you got to prepare the seventh. It's just like in the half diminished seven. You have to, when you're planning out the use of the seventh of this chord, when you're tracking what the voices are doing, you got to prepare the seventh of this chord as if it were a non-dominant seventh chord. And again, you prepare it by step or by common tone. Two, when it's time to resolve this chord, you got to resolve the leading tone and the seventh first. And after you resolve the leading tone and the seventh of the chord, then you're ready to look at the tritones and properly resolve the two tritones. And I'm going to break down after I write out the notes up till now, the notes up until this point. After that, I'm going to show you how to properly resolve the tritones for seven, fully diminished seven. Okay, so here we go. Let's review this stuff here. Don't worry, guys, I'm not sick. I'm just really tired. My biological clock has gone haywire. You guys have no idea. This quarantine, I mean, has really confused my bio clock. And so I'm getting to bed like at 5 a.m. I am not joking.
Same.
Same? You guys too?
Yep.
Yeah.
How interesting. Someone should do like a psych study about this. Interesting. Okay, you guys feel my pain. That's cool beans with me. Here we go. All right. All right, first point. It naturally occurs in harmonic minor, but may be used in both major and minor keys. Bach preferred it over seven half diminished seven in major keys. Why? Bach loves dissonance. All right, number two. It's part of the dominant group in the chart of harmonic functions and directionality. That means it wants to go to the tonic. Ooh. Oh, it wants me to be more proper. Okay. Okay. Point number three, the chord can't be written without one accidental. In major keys, you need the flat six accidental, which creates the seventh of the chord. And in minor keys, you need the leading tone accidentals. Okay, point number four. All right, this is about the two tritones. And again, I put properly in quotations because, again, in the context of this music, this is the proper resolution for this sonority. Okay. All right. So, voice leading issues of the seven, fully diminished seven. I shouldn't say issues, I should say guidelines. You know what? Let's say guidelines. It's not an issue. Well, it is an issue, but guideline is the word I was looking for before. And not of, but for. Okay, number one. You got to prepare the seventh. And again, how do you prepare the seventh in non-dominant seventh chords in half diminished seven and fully diminished seven?
By step and common tone.
Yep, by step and common tone. That's right. All right, number two, you got to resolve the leading tone and the seventh first. And after you do those things, then you resolve the two tritones in the chord. All right, and the next section is about resolving the tritones in the chord. Actually, two. Okay, there are 4 parts to this. Part 1, resolve the leading tone. Part 2, resolve the 7th. Part 3, resolve the tritone. That includes the bass note. All right, the tritone that is formed by the bass note. That's the one you want to look at first. The reason I say the one that is that includes the bass note, because this applies to the chord in all inversions, in root position and all inversions. Look at the tritone that is formed with the bass note first, and then you got to determine whether it's presented as a diminished fifth or a compound diminished fifth, an augmented fourth, or compound augmented fourth. All right. If it's a diminished fifth, then what you want to do is resolve the tritone inward. All right. So in the resulting 1 chord, you'll either have the resolution of the diminished fifth will either be a 3rd or a 10th, right? If the tritone that is formed by the bass note is an augmented fourth, then you resolve it outward by step. It'll open outward by step. Okay, that's how you resolve the tritone that includes the bass note. Again, if the tritone that includes the bass note is a diminished fifth or the compound version of a diminished fifth, then you resolve inward by step. If the tritone that includes the bass is an augmented fourth, then it resolves outward by step. Okay, I'm going to write this part down, what we have so far, and then we'll talk about resolving the 2nd tritone. And don't worry, we're going to do this in music notation. I have some examples for you. Okay, so part 1, 2, the 7th, 3, and then subsection, if it's a diminished fifth, okay. That is for the 1st tritone, the tritone that includes the bass. For the 2nd tritone, for the remaining tritone, here's what you got to do. If the tritone is a diminished fifth, then you resolve it the same way. You resolve it inward by step. But here's the thing. If the tritone is an augmented fourth, then you have to resolve it in parallel motion to a perfect fourth. And this can either be parallel motion up or parallel motion down, but it has to resolve to a parallel motion to a perfect fourth. Okay, so that's how you treat the 2nd tritone. Let me write that down. Let's take a look. So here is my 7 fully diminished 7, and it's resolving, or we're going to resolve it to a 1 chord in root position. All right, so the first things that we got to do: resolve the leading tone and resolve the 7th. Leading tone resolved, leading tone is in the bass, and we did resolve it. And here's my 7th in the alto voice. Where does that got to go? Leading tone in the alto voice, guys? 7th in the alto voice, how does that resolve?
Goes to 1.
Well, yeah, the chord goes to 1. But this individual 7th on the 7 fully diminished 7, how does it resolve? So we resolve the leading tone up by step. How do we resolve the 7th?
Inwards? No, I'm thinking.
Well, remember, first we got to resolve the tendency tones, which is the leading tone and the 7th. Leading tone resolved. Here's the 7th of the chord. How do 7ths on chords always resolve?
Down?
Yeah, down by step, always. All right, there we go. That's it. That's it. Okay, now we have to take apart the tritones. So our first tritone, we have B to F. So this is a compound version of a diminished fifth. So this is the tritone formed by our bass note. And it's a diminished fifth. How are we supposed to resolve that?
If it's a diminished fifth, you resolve by going inwards by step.
Yes, inwards by step. So we're going to take this voice down. Let me make sure I'm in the right voice. We're going to take the tenor voice down to this E here. Let me align that correctly so that it plays back properly. There we go. All right. Now let's take a look at the second tritone that's formed by the upper voices. So we have an A flat to D, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is an augmented fourth. How should we resolve this augmented fourth? Remember, it's the second tritone. How do we resolve the second tritone if it's an augmented fourth?
Resolve in parallel motion to a perfect fourth.
Yes. So in parallel motion to a perfect fourth. Let me make sure. We got to bring this down to a C. There we go. That's how you do it. Let's see what this sounds like. Guys, if you could hear it.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So it's apparently usable in a major key. Way more dissonant than 5/7. All right. Cool beans. Okay. So we applied the guidelines with 7 diminished 7 being in root position. Let's try it in first inversion. And the homework that I'm going to post later, guys, I'm going to have you resolve it in second and third inversion. And you resolve it the same way. It's just more practice. You just are going to apply the rules that I gave you, or the guidelines that I gave you. Okay, so what's the first thing we have to do to resolve this properly? Yeah, let's resolve the leading tone. Our leading tone is in the soprano, so we have a T. We need to take it to do. That's it. All right, what's the second tendency tone that must be resolved next?
The F in the tenor.
Well, what are the two tendency tones we have to look out for? It's the leading tone and the seventh of the chord. Where's the seventh of the chord?
Oh, it was in the soprano.
Well, that's the leading tone. We resolved the leading tone. We got that. But where's the seventh of the chord?
Oh, cordial seventh. Sorry.
Yeah.
Is it in the tenor?
Yeah, it's in the tenor. No, it's in the tenor. That's the seventh of the chord. That A flat is the seventh of the chord, and that resolves down by step. So we're going to take this. So that's the first part of this, guys. You have to resolve the tendency tones. Leading tone goes up, seventh goes down. Down. And now we got to look at the two tritones that form the chord. So let's look at the tritone that forms the bass, that's formed with the bass note. So what do we have here? 1, 2. We have a diminished fifth in the first tritone. So in the first tritone, how do diminished fifths resolve?
Inward by step.
Inward by step. So we're going to take the bass note up to this E. And what inversion of one chord do we have here?
First inversion.
First inversion, which is an augmented fourth. So the augmented fourth in the second tritone, how are we supposed to resolve that?
By parallel motion.
Yeah, by parallel motion. So here, we got to take this up. And there you go. All right, and we have an octave here. We have a doubled fifth. We have the third of the chord. Yeah. All right, let's hear what that sounds like. It's going to play. I wish I could find the eraser on this. Listen to both of them. All right. The second one definitely sounds more unstable because it does resolve to a first inversion chord. And first inversion chords they're supposed to lead you, keep the piece moving forward. So that's why the second one sounds more unstable. On to the other topic on the course timeline, the course outline, excuse me. All right, so in this time period, in this type of music, guys, second inversion chords were reserved for very special functions, and they were not used outside of these limited functions. So just keep that in mind. There are 3 types or 3 categories of second inversion chords that were used in chorales. 2 were used by Bach. One of them wasn't really used by Bach, but we're going to talk about the third anyways. And then we're going to talk about one more category of second inversion chords that wasn't used in chorales, but used in accompanimental figures in homophonic writing. And voice leading is still important, but it's not as important as in polyphonic writing. In homophonic writing, you have an accompaniment that's subservient to a melody, and the fourth type of second inversion chord we're going to talk about happens in accompanimental figures, not in chorales. The first one we're going to talk about is the cadential 6/4, and I know you guys know what this does already. Okay, the cadential 6/4. It's always paired with 5 in root position. That's why when I was using it in the chart of harmonic functions last week, I always put it in the dominant category and bracketed it together with the 5 chord in root position to show that it's basically an extension of the 5 chord. It's part of the 5 chord. All right. It happens only on strong beats in meters. It's used at cadences. You guys knew that already. This is one of the few places where Bach uses a stagnant bass line in his chorales. Bach loved creating scales in the bass line of his chorales. He always liked his bass to be moving somewhere and hated repeated notes in the bass. But Bach didn't have a problem using the repeated note in the bass in the 1/6/4. As you guys know, the 1/6/4 and the 5 chord both use the same bass note. All right. Now here's one thing that I clarified for you guys last week, but I want to make sure that it stays in your mind. You are not creating parallelisms when you carry over common tones between 1/6/4 and 5. You can only create, so if the same notes that create, for example, a fifth in a 1/6/4 chord carries over into the 5 chord, that's not a parallel fifth because the notes are not moving. You can only have parallelisms when you move up or down from a fifth or octave. So just an FYI, common tones carrying over a fifth via common tone doesn't give you a parallel fifth or octave. Keeping it simple for my brain that needs more coffee, C major. Here we go. Okay. So here's the bass note of 1/6/4, which has the same bass note as 5 in root position. That's what I mean by a stagnant bass line. And a bass line that doesn't move. And this is the one of the only places where Bach uses stagnant bass lines in his chorales. Everything else, though, he loves scalar motion. If Bach could create a full scale in his bass line, he does. Okay, there's our 164. So we're going to have the smoothest voice leading between the 164 and our 5 chord. Can we keep any common tones anywhere? Where can we keep common tones?
Oh, you can keep them in the tenor, right?
In the tenor. Well, no, that's the root of our 164. Remember, we're going 164 to 5.
Oh.
Where can we keep the common tones?
5. The 5. The 5th.
Yeah, the soprano, right?
Yeah.
So you notice we go from G to G, octave, G to G, octave. Oh my God, do we have parallel octaves there?
Yeah.
No.
Well,
we don't. Why not? What are the conditions for parallel octaves, guys? What?
Tenths, consecutive tenths.
No, that's okay too. We could have tenths. Well, remember, guys, parallel octaves is only when you move in and out of a perfect fifth or perfect octave. Here, we're not moving at all. We're creating octaves by common tones. So if you're preserving the octave or perfect fifth by common tone, it's not a parallel octave. It's only a parallel octave if you move up or down out of it. Let's resolve it though. All right, let's resolve that 5 chord. Or else we can't appreciate the power of the 164. One voice stays the same and 2 move by step. Now, did this give us a perfect authentic cadence? This 5 to 1, did it give us a perfect authentic cadence?
No.
Doesn't the soprano has to end on 1?
Yeah, it did not, because you're right, Noelia, because the soprano did not end on 1. Let's hear this progression, this 164, going to 5, going to this 1 chord. Let's hear what the results of that are. All right, is the passing 6/4. Okay, so passing 6/4s are used to extend a harmony by connecting 2 versions of the same chord by step in the bass voice. For example, if I wanted to extend the sound of the 1 chord, I could do that without having a stagnant, bass line by going from 1 to 1/6. But I can smooth over that third by that motion by inserting a passing chord between 1 and 1/6 to extend the sound of 1. And the most common passing chord between 1 and 1/6 or 1/6 to 1 is 5/6/4. It creates a scalar bass line between 1 and 1/6. And again, I'm going to demonstrate all of this, and I'm going to have the notes here. All right. Passing 6/4 chords are always used on weak beats, and in the case where they're used in subbeats, it's always on the weak part of a beat. Something to be aware of. I don't know if Dr. Galland will ask for this when you're in Theory 3, but a lot of theorists, when they ask you to include passing 6/4 chords in your harmonic analysis, they ask that you put them in parentheses, just to show that they're very incidental harmonies. They're stepped in and out of right away and don't really affect the harmonic motion of the piece overall, because they just have really, really weak harmonic functions. So when I ask you guys to do a harmonic analysis, I will ask for you to put parentheses around passing 6/4 chords. And so let's see. And the most common passing 6/4s are 5/6/4, and that's used to extend the 1 harmony. And actually 1/6/4 is a popular passing chord to extend the 4 chord. So if you see a 1/6/4 chord happening between 2 versions of the 4 chord and it's happening on a weak beat, that is not a cadential 6/4. It's acting as a passing 6/4. Now, again, these aren't the only passing 6/4s. They're just the most popular. Passing 6/4, again, you can recognize it when you have a second inversion chord connect 2 versions of the same harmony through stepwise motion. Again, I'm gonna demonstrate this in the score, but let me put this down in your notes here. This also works the other way, 4/6 to 1/6/4/5. Again, this is not functioning as a cadential 6/4. It's happening on a weak beat or a weak part of the beat, and it's used to extend the 4 harmony. So in this case, 1/6/4 is a passing 6/4, not a cadential 6/4. And again, these aren't the only 2 passing 6/4. It's just they're the most popular. Whenever you see the extension of a harmony, a 6/4 connecting 2 versions of the same harmony, you got a passing 6/4 there. All right. About 5/6/4. All right. You guys remember at the beginning when we talked about the Triad, 7 diminished, 6? 7 diminished in first inversion?
Yes.
How does that relate to passing chords? Well, just an FYI. When Bach wanted to extend the sound of one,
Suspensions.
well, he loved suspensions, yes, that's true. But in the case of passing chords, when Bach wanted to extend the sound of one, but not have a stagnant bass line, well, Bach never liked stagnant bass line. So if he was going to extend the one harmony and went from 1 to 1/6, he used a passing chord to create a scalar bass line there. The thing is, Bach didn't like to use 5/6/4. He preferred another passing chord, but it wasn't a chord in second inversion. It was 7 diminished 6, the triad 7 diminished 6, 7 diminished in first inversion. Bach preferred to use that as the passing chord between 1 and 1/6. Just an FYI. Looks a lot like the chord we started with, no?
Mm-hmm.
That is fine. Oh my goodness, wait a second, look what we got here. Parallel octaves. That's not fine. That is not fine. Let's fix that. All right, in that one chord, let's do I want to triple the root in the 1/6? It's all right. So long as we, wait, no, we just doubled the root. We didn't triple it. All right, good. So we broke out of that, parallel, was it a parallel fifth or a parallel octave? It was a parallel octave. We broke out of it. It's okay that we have a unison there so long as we break away from it moving forward. If we preserve that unison, then we have parallel unisons, which is just as bad as parallel octaves and fifths. All right, but it's okay to not have a full-bodied chord here because it's a 1/6, and first inversion chords are supposed to take you somewhere. They're supposed to be unstable. So let's see what this sounds like. Let's listen to it. No, play the whole thing. Come on. Nice. And guess what? It works backwards too. That 5/6/4 can connect both from 1 to 1/6 and 1/6 to 1. So what if we went this way? Let's move it in reverse. I'm just going to spell this out quickly so we can hear it. Not paying attention to we could totally reverse the voicing. It'll work. All right. It does work both ways. Oh, what did I do there? Oh, sorry. Let's play that again. Let's have a pause. No, let's just play it. So 5/6/4 helped us extend the one sound. And you can go from root position to first inversion 1 or first inversion 1 to root position 1. Okay. Pedal 6/4. Oh, did I mention that these are also called neighbor 6/4s? It's another name for it. The reason they're called neighbor 6/4s is because they create a neighbor tone in the upper voices, not in the bass. The bass has the same note. It's like a pedal, hence the pedal 6/4. But in the upper voices, it creates a neighbor tone between the two chords that you're repeating. So that's why it's also called a neighbor 6/4. Just know that the terms are interchangeable. When you hear someone say neighbor 6/4, it means the same thing as pedal 6/4, and pedal 6/4 means the same thing as neighbor 6/4. Okay, let's highlight. All right. So I'm going to create the most common pedal 6/4, 4/6/4, which helps to extend the one chord in root position. Again, we're still thinking in C major, just keeping it simple. Here's my one chord in root position. Here's my one chord in root position again, and I want to extend this sound. And instead of repeating 1 3 times so that it carries over for 3 beats, I'm going to insert a pedal 6/4 there. That's a 4/6/4, a 4 in second inversion. Let me voice the first chord. Okay. All right, let's have smooth voice leading between 1 and 4/6/4. Let's keep common tones where possible. Again, this is not a parallel octave because these voices are not moving. They're the same notes. We're just preserving notes from one chord to the other. Now, if we moved and preserved an octave, then it would be a parallel octave. But in this case, since it's an octave created by common tones, it's not a parallel octave. What voice am I on? Okay. All right. And I'm just going to move it back to the same thing here. Again, moving from 4/6/4 to 1 in root position. Again, we're connecting the same chords together. We want to repeat this chord without like repeating it 3 times. So we're inserting something that just helps to extend the sound. The middle. What voice are we on? Soprano. So therefore, none of this is parallel octaves. This is just carrying over common tones. Okay, let's hear what this pedal 6/4 sounds like between these two 1 chords in root position. It's a familiar sound. Again, you'll not hear this in Bach chorales. The only time that Bach likes to have stagnant bass lines is when you're going from a cadential, you have a real cadential 6/4 going to 5. All right. Any questions, guys? So passing 6/4 connects two versions of the same harmony, creating a scalar bass line, and a passing 6/4, a pedal 6/4, basically extends the same harmony. All right. And look, we have neighbor tones here. You know, approach by step and left by step in the opposite direction, taking us back to the same note, neighbor tone here. Oh, but look, we also have a neighbor tone here, taking us back to the same note. Any questions? Now, the last type of 6/4 chord is not used in any Baroque music. It's not used in chorales. It is something that's only used in accompaniment figures. When you have accompaniment and melody, we're no longer dealing with polyphonic compositions, and the voice leading rules become more lax. A lot of voice leading rules, like resolving of tendency tones and other things, carry over into the high classical music, but it's not as strict. So the next 6 chord we're looking at, again, do not use these in chorales. You'll only find these in homophonic composition. The name of the 6/4 chord is called the Consonant 6/4, and it's basically, I could demonstrate it quickly here. When you alternate a root position chord and a second inversion chord, one after the other, to create an accompanimental figure. Again, it's not used in 4-part writing at all. So I'm going to pretend I'm writing piano music here. These are consonant 6/4s, this and this. They're all 1 chords. But here you see an alternation between root position, second inversion, root position, second inversion. It sounds like this. It's like umpa, 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 umpa. That type of accompanimental figure, that's a consonant 6/4.